15th, day 21. 3 weeks now at sea, and everything that isn't wet is damp. In the last 6 days, we've seen the sun perhaps 30 minutes. The rest of the time, we've been surrounded by fog or socked in by pouring cold rain. It's a good thing we're not relying on celestial navigation, because if I were really sharp with a sextant and had it out and ready, yesterday I might have gotten a sun sight, maybe. But I'm not that sharp with celestial, and I'm not that good with a sextant. And the boat's been pitching, rock and rolling, bouncing all over the place in these sea conditions. Wind has ranged from fresh breeze to a half gale. Water coming aboard in the cockpit. Right now Laura's out on watch. And I'm sitting in here trying to stay warm and relatively dry. Just had a cup of noodle soup. Feeling pretty good. Bree's sitting here with me. And our position, we're north of 38. Still running up the 160 meridian northwards. No sign of any westerly breeze. And no sign of this weather clearing. Barometer did rise yesterday morning. We thought that was encouraging, but didn't really change anything. Patch of sun for a little bit. And generally not fun conditions. I mean, sailing is okay, out there getting the wind and sailing a beam reach in a generally easterly wind at the moment. Conditions haven't changed in several days. I'm still getting seasick. So it's kind of uncomfortable for me, and that's a strain on Laura, who is absolutely Wonder Woman, taking care of everything in the cabin, doing all the cooking and all the cleaning, or pretty much all of the cooking and all the cleaning. I'm not doing much of any of that. Standing my watches at the tiller, handling navigation, and trying to hold my breakfast down. It's been my major occupation. Not able to eat much, lost a lot of weight, but in generally pretty good spirits. We're definitely looking forward to getting to our destination, hoping that we can make it. We still have 2 weeks till the rendezvous, almost 13 days, 14 days, and so there's a good shot that we'll make it there, but we still haven't made our turn to eastward, and we won't for a few more days. So we'll get there when we get there, and do our laundry and have a hot meal and try to get dried out, and then reevaluate and go from there. Boat's taking a beating. We've got some leaks. Nothing major, just enough to be annoying. Got some broken gear. Again, nothing major. But we're still sailing just fine. The boat is handling the conditions just perfectly well. Sailing well, nicely. We ran the engine this morning for 2 hours to run the water maker and charge up the batteries. Our solar panels haven't seen the sun in almost a week, so they're not helping much. Observations, Laura saw a shark yesterday. First interesting thing we've seen in the water other than trash and junk and fishing net floats, which we continue to see plenty of. Amazing how much junk there is floating out here in the middle of nowhere. We're 2,000 miles almost from land, and there's trash everywhere in the water. So don't know what to make of that. It's just humankind soiling the nest, you might say. We're having trouble getting our lighters to work. The lighting devices that we use on the stove and the lanterns, it's so damp that they don't want to light. And it took a good 15 minutes to get the stove lit this morning so I could boil some water for tea. We are making progress. moving in the right direction. The wind is cooperating. Sea conditions not too bad. Right now we're reaching under working jib only, doing between 5 and 6 knots. And that's been generally the condition for the last week or so. I haven't bothered to put up the main. The wind is a little bit less in the morning and picks up throughout the day until it gets pretty gnarly at night. Nighttime conditions are bad. It's black, black, black. We haven't seen the stars or a moon or anything for a week. You know, it's just, you know, the rain pours down cold, and the seas slop over the cockpit combing and hit you in the face, and it's just cold and miserable, and it's all you can do to stay on watch for 3 hours. We have been heaving to and coming below and just resting and recovering. Last night we spent nearly the whole night in the cabin, hove to, because you go up on watch in the cockpit, and it's so cold and wet, it's difficult to hold a course, and the conditions are challenging enough that makes it dangerous. You don't want to broach to and risk breaking something, so it's far safer to heave to. It's far safer for us anyway. There's only 2 of us on the boat. We need to stay rested. We need to keep our strength up. We need to be alert and able to handle emergencies that may come up. So rather than press on through the night to get to our destination in a hurry, you know, deadlines are bad things on a boat. Can't be pressed to meet a deadline. So far better if we can't hold the course for whatever reason, or if our physical condition is such that we can't maintain in the cockpit, then come below, get out of the foul weather gear, dry off, get warm, have a cup of hot noodle soup or tea or something, and warm up, and take a couple of hours. So that's what we've been doing. And because of that, we're not making as much progress as we might have. But I don't care. It doesn't bother me a bit if we have a 70-mile day instead of a 100-mile day or a 120-mile day, because we chose to spend a few hours getting warmed up and nourished and rested. So that's it. This same situation, this is going to go on for quite a while, I think. I don't think there's no sign of this weather changing, none at all. It's exactly the same as it was yesterday, the day before, the day before, the day before. The weather has not changed. We've got fog, we've got rain, we've got wind, and occasionally fairly big waves. According to our weather book, these conditions mean that we're on the edge of 2 fronts, on the edge of a frontal system. So that may be. If that's the case, then we're just going to run up the edge of this frontal system, get our northing, and with luck run into some westerlies and turn towards Cape Flattery and make a nice fast run into Cape Flattery, where, if we're very fortunate, the weather will be as it has been in the past when we've been in Puget Sound, sunny and dry. If not, it'll be wet and miserable and cold, but that's okay. We do need to get there so we can dry out, effect repairs on the boat. We got a lot of work to do on the boat. And we have some modifications we want to make also. Yeah, things we've learned a lot. We continue to learn a lot. And we will continue to learn a lot. And hopefully, if you're watching this, you'll benefit from our mistakes and our experiences and learn along with us. Right, Bree? Today is June 16th, day 22. Very much like yesterday. Cold, wet, miserable. Except colder and wetter, and maybe a little more so. We've just taken our noon position on the GPS. There's no sight because we haven't seen the sun except for about 30 minutes for a week. No stars, no moon, no nothing. Just surrounded by fog. And when there's no fog, there's rain. Like right now, cold rain. Laura's sitting out in the cockpit, being miserable. Very light winds. We had this morning. We got a little surprise. We were forced onto the port tack because the wind shifted to the west. So we're beginning to pick up the westerlies at about 38 degrees 50 minutes north, still on meridian 160, and still proceeding pretty much northerly. This morning the winds were stronger. We were able to steer a rumline course for Cape Flattery, which got us all excited, but now we're back to playing between north and 10 or 15 degrees, 10 or 15, trying to get 30, can't quite make it. But that's okay. You know, we still need to go quite a ways north, which is a little bit depressing because that means it's still going to get more cold. And we don't like the cold or the wet, especially wet and cold. It's not very much fun. Bree seems to be just curling up and sleeping through it all. She only complains when we make her move, so she's all right. But the two of us, Laura and I, are definitely feeling the effects of the cold. We're unable to stand watches through the night. It's just too much. Too cold, too wet, too debilitating, too fatiguing. For me, when I come off watch, it takes me 20 minutes or so to get out of my gear. It's pretty exhausting to get out of the foul weather gear and the fleeces and put on dry, warm clothes, relatively warm clothes, down below, and get over the retching and heaving that always accompanies that. Still afflicted with seasickness. Last night, I was vomiting in the sink again. This morning, I'm pretty well okay. A breakfast of hot oatmeal and hot cocoa helps a lot. Had our lunch of Simon, which is normal for us. It's a very, very, very good thing to have in these cold, damp conditions, and very easy on the tummy for me. We only hope that our supply of hot cocoa holds out until we reach our destination, or at least make landfall at Cape Flattery. Once we make landfall at Cape Flattery, it'll be a pretty quick trip to our destination. It's only about 70 miles beyond Cape Flattery. Poring over sailing directions and what have you, we've come to the conclusion that we might as well just give up any hope of having any sunlight until we get there. But you know, it's been so long since we've seen the sun that we're beginning to doubt that it's still there. We haven't quite hit 40 north yet, but we're moving in that direction. The winds are very light, and it's kind of depressing because we want to get moving, we want to get to our destination. We still have a long way to go, more than 1,800 miles to Cape Flattery, and we're hopeful, but these conditions are very wearing on us. We're learning a lot, and of course it's all good, but the constant wet and damp are very hard on our spirits. A little treat of some chocolate, some hot cocoa, that's more chocolate, isn't it? Is very welcome and helps brighten our spirits a bit. Also, you know, we pretty much resigned ourselves to not making a whole lot of progress at night. Our binnacle lights don't work, so it's very hard to keep a course. Can't see anything outside. The only light is from our masthead light. So, I mean, can barely see the sails unless you shine a flashlight on them. You can't see the sea at all. Can't see the waves, the sea state. They just sneak up on you and slap you in the face, come aboard, soak you with cold seawater. So sitting out in the cockpit, and then when the wind drops and you're just bobbing around out there in the rain, it's very, very depressing and very hard on you. So, you know, we have taken to heaving to and cuddling for several hours every night, which of course slows our progress, but it makes us feel a lot better, and it keeps our spirits up. So if you're going to do that, you have to remember to keep a good watch, because although we haven't seen another ship in, what is it, 2 weeks now, they are out there, and you have to watch out for them. And we expect to see increasing traffic. We expect to see increasing traffic as we get closer to Cape Flattery. If we ever get closer to Cape Flattery. Sometimes it seems like we're experiencing something out of a Stephen King novel here. Nothing but endless fog and rain, and no end in sight. We wake up, we go outside in the morning and look around, and it's the same patch of ocean that we were in yesterday. Still a lot of trash in the water, not as much as we were seeing a few degrees farther south. Interesting thing, yesterday afternoon, late in the afternoon, right up until dark, actually, we sailed through several miles of small jellyfish floating on the surface. Thousands of them. They're about 3 inches across, little bubbles or sails. Some of them were flat, some of them were bubbled. Just drifting, flowing along the current. We sailed through them for miles and miles. Thousands of them. It was kind of interesting. Of course, the birds are our constant companion. I'm going to have to get a bird guide so I can identify them. I have no idea. Some seagulls recently. I know what those look like. But I'm kind of interested in that. Something to pass the time. We've been conserving our electricity because our solar panels aren't terribly effective without sun. We did run the engine for 2 hours yesterday and topped off our house bank, so our house bank is good. We ran the water maker. Water maker doesn't work as well in cold water, so it takes twice as long to make water, but that's really not a problem. We have plenty of water. We have plenty of water in our tanks and extra jerry jugs, and plus the water maker is what we're using on a daily basis. We have used up some of our tank water because we wanted to lighten the boat. We used up about 15 gallons of it. Laura's having a hard time with the light air out there. The sails are luffing and banging and slatting, and it's hard to keep them filled. The wind was stronger earlier, but it's died off now. It's frustrating because we want to get where we're going, but at the same time, we don't want to risk damaging the boat. We're sailing very conservatively at the moment, having had some awakening experiences earlier in the trip, keeping our sail area down, boat speed down, but we're still doing 5 to 6 knots. So we're not right now. Right now we're doing about 2, but we have been doing 5 to 6 knots through the day, and then at night we sail until we can't sail anymore. Can't see to keep a course, or can't see to keep the sails trimmed. Then we heave to, which is something we're getting pretty good at, and come down below and get warmed up, which is and there's not much more to say because nothing's changed in the last several days. We're just getting colder and wetter and moving farther north, little by little, towards our destination. Bree likes to sit here, curl up with us wherever we are, as she's sucking up our warmth. Temperature in the cabin is about 60 degrees. We burn our lamps, and it helps take some of the chill off. And of course the body heat from the three of us helps keep it warm in here. Outside I have no idea, but I can tell you this, it's darn cold. My little feet and hands are frozen. My hands were so cold that I was having a hard time manipulating things when I came in, you know. But we'll get through it. It'll be okay. It's all good. And we'll have wonderful experiences to talk about around that warm fire that I remember at Lopez. Was it Lopez? Oh, they had a hot tub there too. Yeah, hot tub. That sounds good. Although it's wet, and we really want to be dry and warm, not wet and warm. But meanwhile, here we are out here in the cold, and probably going to be out here in the cold for another week or two, probably I imagine 2 more weeks, and maybe even longer, if we don't get some decent wind here pretty quick. So boat's doing fine, except for, as we've said earlier, some failures, some leaks, minor little things, nothing big. The loss of the tiller pilot now is really getting to be a problem. I mean, not a problem, but you know, losing the tiller pilot, and we really would be nice to have that working right now, because we're having to hand steer all the way with these light winds. There's no lashing the tiller or anything like that. We haven't been able to do that for a week. So we've been hand steering every mile of the way. We've been hand steering all the way, watch and watch, no breaks. Just in the evenings when we heave to for a few hours, just to get warmed up. And I'm rambling, so.
First sun in how many days?
Sun at last. June 17th, day 23. A little north of 39. We've got our westerlies now. Definitely got our westerlies. We are sailing a reach on a rumline course for Cape Flattery at better than 6 knots over the ground, according to the GPS. The weather is fine. We're getting intermittent sunshine. It's warm. It's relatively dry. Well, I should say relatively warm, because it's actually fairly chilly. Wind chill factor has got us down pretty cold here, but there's blue sky out there, and crew is in good spirits. Boat is sailing well. We got some sunshine for the solar panels to help charge up our batteries a little bit, and things are going well. We're making wonderful progress. We're feeling good and enjoying a fine sail this morning. This morning found us in good conditions, dry boat, and generally feeling pretty good about ourselves. It looks like we have a bet, Laura and I. I say we'll make landfall on the 29th, the morning of the 29th. Laura says we'll be at Port Angeles on the 28th. So either way is good. Either way is good. But I think my math is maybe a little bit better than hers, although she is the optimist in the crew. So we shall see. Stay tuned.
And Chuck's not seasick anymore.
Huh?
And Chuck's not seasick anymore.
Oh, and Chuck's not seasick anymore. Well, Chuck hasn't been seasick for about 36 hours. that doesn't mean he's done being seasick. That just means he hasn't been seasick for about 36 hours. But still, that's 21 straight days of seasickness. So, you know, a new personal record. 21 straight days, my God. Well, June 18th. That makes it day 24. Well, yesterday we were optimistic. We had some pretty boisterous conditions and a strong westerly wind, and we seemed to be covering a lot of ground. But the reality is we just didn't get as far as we thought we would. Only a little over 50 miles. So, given the rate of our progress, I don't see any way for us to get to Cape Flattery in less than 2 weeks from today, and probably more like 3 weeks. So it's going to be a long, cold, miserable trip. The cold is really having a bad effect on us. We're unable to stand the watch schedule that we had originally set up, 4 hours during the day, 3 hours at night. We're shortening that up. We're going to do 3 hours during the day and try to do 2 hours, but realistically it may be reduced to even less than 2 hours each during the night. Don't know if we'll be able to continue sailing at night. We haven't been able to continue sailing through the night because of the weather and because of the cold. So, you know, that's really slowed our progress. We're having problems with gear. One of our winches failed yesterday, and of course it's the starboard side, which, being on the port tack, that's where our jib is tied. And all of our lighters, the little devices that we use to light the stove and the lanterns with, have failed. There's one left that still works, sort of, but it may take 5 minutes to get it lit so we can light the stove. So if that quits on us, it's going to be a very unpleasant trip, because that'll mean no more hot soup when we come off watch, no more hot cocoa, and no more hot tea or hot meals of any kind. We won't be able to cook. So that's going to make it really, really uncomfortable. As if it isn't comfortable and uncomfortable enough already. It really is a comfort to come off watch and have a cup of hot soup to warm you up, because you get chilled to the bone out there in the wind. I don't think it's really all that cold out there. It might be in the 40s in the Fahrenheit scale, but it sure feels cold with the wind blowing across. I realize I'm looking a little scraggly here, but I don't plan on, I think my beard's gotten to the point where I can't shave with a regular razor anymore, so I'm going to have to wait till I can plug in my clippers when we get to the dockside, and I can plug in my electric devices for grooming. Bree seems to be handling everything just fine. She mainly spends all of her time curled up. Every once in a while she'll get up to eat and drink and use her box, but for the most part she just curls up in the blankets and stays there. Again, of course, we're learning a lot. We at the beginning of the trip, our main concern was avoiding sunburn. I'd like to be back there now, but now it's avoiding hypothermia. Cold feet, cold hands. At least, mercifully, two things. Number one, we're not wet anymore, although everything inside the boat got soaked and will stay that way until we can open the boat up and in some dry air and sunshine and get it dried out, spread stuff out on the dock and what have you. So we're going to be damp for the rest of the trip, and we're going to be cold for the rest of the trip. But mercifully, I have not suffered with seasickness. I haven't suffered with seasickness for the last 2 days. Cross my fingers, knock on wood, whatever else you have to do, but seasickness hasn't bothered me for a couple of days, so even though we are bouncing around a bit. Sailing wise, we had yesterday we sailed with the reef main and working jib all day. Towards sundown we took the main down. The wind had picked up quite a lot, and we actually were able to make better progress closer to our desired heading with just the working jib up. However, once it got dark again, there were no stars. The waves were pretty big. The wind picked up, and it got really cold. And Laura was unable to stand her full 3-hour watch. She came below after 2 hours. I had already been chilled to the bone because I stood 4.5 hours before that. And so we elected once again to heave to for a few hours and get warm, which we did. And we resumed our progress at daylight. Under working jib, we're making about 5 knots, a little bit better than 5 knots. But we're not able to hold the heading towards our destination. The wind has shifted a bit and is pushing us southward, so my concern is south of east. We're heading about, right now we're on a heading of about 60, which is a rum line to our destination, to our waypoint, but we've been pushed south, at times unable to hold even 90 degrees, and so we've actually lost some northing, a few seconds worth of northing. So, it's discouraging. We're not making the progress that we want to make, and of course the longer we spend out here, the worse it gets. I mean, the slower it gets, the less able we are to sail the boat and efficiently. And of course, the longer it takes, the worse it gets. On and on. It's sort of what they call a vicious cycle, I believe. In any case, we are moving towards our destination, albeit slowly. And we'll get there. Might take us 2 or 3 weeks more to get there. But we will get there. And when we get there, we'll get warmed up and dried out, repair all the minor little deficiencies that have developed in the boat, and reevaluate and look forward to moving south again. So meanwhile, finish my soup. See if I can get Bree to lay down on my feet, get my feet warmed up, and prepare to go back on watch in about an hour. June 19th, day 25. Well, yesterday we got the boat steering herself again by lashing the tiller. We happen to be on that particular point of sail where we can do that. And we decided that we must push on through the night. So we went to 2-hour watches and hot bunked it, which means Laura crawls out of the sleeping bag, goes on deck, and I come down and crawl into the sleeping bag for, well, about an hour and a half after I get out of my gear and everything. I get about an hour and a half between taking off the gear and then getting back into it to go back on watch. And there's this very short watch below, let me tell you. Watch on deck is very long. Same 2 hours, but for some reason out there it's long. Down here it's real short. Right now it's daytime, it's a little warmer out. And Laura is able to sit inside and hold the camera because the boat's steering herself. Hello, Bree. We make pretty good progress. I haven't done our noon position yet. We're about to do that. But but I think we've done fairly well towards our destination. We still have a long way to go. And I'm tired of being tired, I'm tired of being cold, and I'm tired of being seasick. I had a couple days off from the seasickness, but this morning it hit me again. Just one wave of nausea as I went out to go on deck, but dang it, that's too much. I'm tired of it already. But the boat's still sailing fine. No more gear failures so far, and we'll get there eventually. It's just taking longer than we had hoped, and so we're getting tired. We have to guard against hypothermia, make sure we eat well. Laura whipped up a dynamite breakfast this morning. I don't know how she does it. Scrambled eggs and pancakes. It was wonderful. Really hit the spot. I washed down with more hot cocoa, which I'm afraid we're going to run out of hot cocoa before we make landfall. That's going to be a real hardship. We did manage to restore one of our lighters by drying it out and putting it in a plastic bag to keep it dry. So we are able to light the stove. It looks like we don't have to worry about that for a while yet. So, the camera, however, we're running out of hard drive space. I'm concerned that we may not be able to continue these video logs unless I can drag out my computer and download the hard drive of the camera to the computer. However, that involves using the inverter, and our house bank batteries are low again because we haven't had much sun, and I don't think we're going to have much sun. It looks to me like it's just going to get colder and grayer. But things are bound to improve, I'm sure, once we get farther north, closer to Cape Flattery. I'm sure everything will be much better. Bree thinks so too. That's your Bree. Just keeping my feet warm. June 20th, day 26. Pretty much the same as yesterday, however, today we were blessed with a few hours of nice bright sunshine. Cheered us up immensely. Dried out a little bit. My shoes are dry. But last night we were on the 2 on, 2 off watch schedule. It gets a little wearing. You crawl into the bunk and immediately it's time to wake up again and get dressed. But we've been successful with the boat steering herself with the tiller lashed, so not so bad. Can spend most of the time in the cabin, just peeking out every 20 minutes or so to check the horizon and keep an eye on the heading. We've been proceeding with the tiller lash now for a couple of days, and with only minor attention to it, it's been holding course very well. Right now we finally crossed latitude 40 north. We're proceeding on course as before, with on the starboard tack with the working jib only and the tiller lashed, and we're just cruising along at 4.5 knots or so right now, 4.5 to 5, and there's a big sea running. Every once in a while we get rolled over pretty far, but the wind is steady and it's fairly comfortable. So had a hearty meal last night and another nice stick to your ribs breakfast this morning, courtesy of my lovely wife Laura, and in pretty good spirits. The sunshine really helped a lot. However, I don't think it helped charge our batteries too much, so we're going to have to run the engine before we run the water maker again. So that's what we're going to do this afternoon, run the engine probably for 2 hours. I don't like to do that, it freaks the cat out, but and it burns up our fuel. I don't want to be, when we get to Cape Flattery, I don't want to have to refuel. I don't want to have to refuel out here from jerry cans, and once we get inside the strait, I'm not sure conditions will be any better for us to refuel. So we're just going to have to play that one by ear. So far we've got about 3.5 hours on this tank of fuel, which is good. Should be good for 13 hours, but we can't be sure. I'm going to plan on having 10 hours of fuel in the tank and try not to use up more than 5 of it before we get to Cape Flattery. That's going to depend completely on how much sunshine we get. So, here we are, continuing on towards our destination. Now we're making about 100 miles a day, so we can pretty easily tell how long it's going to take. We've got over 1,500 miles to go. June 21st, first day of summer, day 27. Much like yesterday and the day before, we are proceeding northeasterly under working jib with the tiller lashed. That's why Laura's down here holding the camera and I'm holding the cat. Bree, how you doing? Bree's doing fine. Crawled out into the cockpit yet last night to look around. We've had a few glimpses of sunlight, but not enough to charge our batteries, so today we're going to have to run the engine, charge up our house batteries. Battery in the camera is getting low, got to charge that up. And we're just proceeding towards Cape Flattery. We still got a long ways to go, but we will get there. We're making reasonably good time. Good distance runs, about 100 miles a day. And we expect it'll be another couple of weeks before we get there. The trip's turning out to be much longer than we had planned. I don't know how Nick and Jenny made it in 28 days, but I guess they're better sailors than I am. So, but whatever. Or maybe they just had better weather. I must say I've had more pleasant trips, but the food's been good. This morning Laura whipped up another nice breakfast of fried stuff. Eggs, onion, cheese. It was good. Ate it right out of the pan. Bree liked it too. So here we are, all three of us in our little boat, heading towards the Great Pacific Northwest. Rendezvous in 2 days. Don't think we're going to make it, but that's okay. We'll be thinking about them. And as we continue to learn a lot. And the boat's keeping us reasonably comfortable. Now that we're able to lash the tiller and stay inside most of the time. It's essential to keep a good watch every 10 or 15 minutes. Open the hatch, poke your head out, do a 360-degree check. We're doing 2-hour watches. So every 2 hours we check everything on deck, do the watch change, take turns crawling into the sleeping bag. According to our thermometer, it's not that cold, but it sure feels cold. And that's what counts. It feels cold. It'd be good to have a little more sunshine today, but I don't know. We'll just have to see what happens. The barometer is rising. Again, don't know if that really means anything. We haven't figured that out. It doesn't seem to make much difference whether it goes up or down at this point. I think we're just bumping along the top of the North Pacific High here, and as we go nearer and farther, the barometer goes up and down, which is probably a good thing because it's we're keeping in the right zone for the winds that we want. We have a mild westerly pushing us along. We've been averaging 4.5 to 5 knots. Last night the wind dropped quite a bit, but we made progress, slow progress. But we have decided we're not going to increase sail at night. go out on deck and put sails up and take sails down unless we absolutely have to. So we haven't changed our sail configuration in a couple of days, so it's important to check for chafe on the lines and that sort of thing. In the morning, I've had to, swig up the sheet, and, tighten a couple of things up. They tend to loosen as they get wet, and stretch a little bit, just a tiny bit, because we're using good lines, good rope. New England ropes, Stay Set for the sheets, and Stay Set X for the halyards. The halyards haven't loosened up at all. Sheet a tiny bit. I don't know what kind of line is on the tack down haul. That one loosened up a bit. I had to tighten that one up too. But it's just part of working the boat. Keeping everything tight, keep an eye on everything, watching for chafe. We're especially concerned about the radar reflector. It was rubbing in a couple of spots, so we've moved that up and down a couple of times. And of course the halyard that it's on is stretched. It's just a little polyester flag halyard stuff that little 1/8 inch line that you buy. Might buy it for clothesline or something like that. So anyway, here we go.